So, welcome to Car Convos, the Drill Team Dynamics podcast, where drill team nerds talk about drill team nerd things. This is a special episode of our podcast where we're going to answer specific questions that come out of our network. If you are a drill team alumni, so you participated at some point and you have now graduated, but you want to stay in touch and stay connected to drill team, head over to JROTC drillteamtraining.com. Scroll down until you see DTD Network, and you can learn all about that here. Just a way to stay connected with the activity, whether you are just a fan or whether you're looking for opportunities to judge or train or just stay involved, or maybe you're coaching a team yourself now that you're graduated. Got all kinds of resources and community for that. Today, as always, we are joined by Kirsten and Cheeto. We also have a live studio audience, as it were. We're going to run down these questions. They were submitted through our network, and they are all extremely thought-provoking. And hopefully, in answering these questions, you will learn something. We will learn something about ourselves, and everyone will walk away a little bit more knowledgeable for it. So, without further ado, are we ready for question one?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
So, question number one, because we're just going to go for it here. We're just going to full send these. First question that was asked is, what drill methods or ideas have failed, and what have you learned throughout that process? Does somebody want to start us off? What have we done that has absolutely failed? I have my answer, but I'll yap last.
I guess I can go.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it really just depends on. I think when we have been with a group, whatever we're doing when we're working with that group generally works. I would say that in terms of like what failure looks like on our end is whether or not the groups are able to sustain what we're doing. And so I think for us, the thing that quote unquote failed is probably just going in and making a team good.
Yeah, I think back to the early days.
Well, I think the very, very first camp that we did, we went to Hawaii and we worked with those kiddos, and I was, just out of high school, so I was in like super training mode, and they got really good while we were there, but like pretty much immediately fell apart. And I think when Matt talked to one of the instructors, is they were like, yeah, they got really good when that mean girl was there, but then they just really didn't have the motivation to, keep practicing like that or like wanting to do that.
And so I shut the team down.
And so I think there was like in that first year, there was just a string of like dead teams in our wake because we went in and made them very good because we were actually training them, but we weren't really doing anything to like teach them how to sustain
that high level. Yeah.
And so I would say in terms of like what didn't work was just going in and training as if we were their coaches.
Yes.
And basically replicating either being the commanders by doing the training that commanders do or doing the training that coaches, instructors do.
I think what we learned very quickly was that sustainability had to be a primary factor in what we were doing, because I think back to those early years, and we had a ton of folks who just didn't repeat with us because their teams didn't exist anymore after we had gotten there. It was almost one of those things of like, oh, your eyes are open to what you could do, but because there was no way to sustain it or no path forward, it was just like, oh, well, if we can't do that, then we won't do it at all.
That's what I mean. So like from the like training standpoint, having come from a really high level background, I think everything we've ever done while we're physically with the school has made them better. So I don't think there's anything that we've done where it's like, well, that didn't work at all, or like they didn't get better. I really think it all just comes back down to can the program be successful either, and even like the schools, like if we were there for a good amount of time and then we left and then they immediately fell off. Like I think the biggest thing that would be failing would be just going in and making them better at the drill. It either only lasted for that group, or as soon as we weren't there to do some of the like managing of behaviors or like being this, because sometimes like being with a group, they're there because they like you.
Mm-hmm.
Removing your
Yeah.
presence also causes that group to fall apart because what they were really centered around was you and not them. So I really think that in terms of like failure, that would probably be the biggest thing, is like, and we have gotten better and better as we've gone about like really teaching them how to do it, which means that when we go and train somewhere, is I think they get maybe less good than in the beginning times.
It would be way easier just to take the bull by the horns and like just brute force a team into being good. And I think sometimes that's what the client maybe expects or even wants.
And I think that only happens nowadays if the team is very, very, very well established, and like either we've been going for 4 or 5 years, or the team itself has a strong culture where what they need is the execution. But by and large, I would say now that like what we've really learned is about, we may make less visible physical gains, but if the team is able to sustain itself for multiple years and build over time, I think that that's what we have found to be more successful for us and what we're offering.
Yeah, I think I was not around very much for like the earliest years, so I didn't really see a lot of that. Like I only had the one and then like onesie or twosies where I would like hop in. So I think it's interesting coming in a little bit later on the what works doesn't work, because at this point I've not really seen anything that's ever failed, like outright failed. Um well, okay, no, the one thing would be giving unarmed exhibition teams sequences and then being like, okay, build your whole routine off of that and expecting that to work, and not giving them a sequence that has a purpose or a reason or a skill set behind it. But that was early days, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say the biggest thing is that a lot of the methods or ideas, they have not failed in my opinion. They just were applied to the wrong system. And so a lot of what we do now is taking the pieces and parts of previous methods or ideas and then reworking them in different context or for a different purpose. And then the thing that like didn't work as efficiently, because again, I don't think it necessarily failed. Everybody always gets better, they always improve. Like I think it's really hard to just blatantly fail in terms of teaching, because if people got better, you didn't fail. It's just how long will they stay better, that sustainability aspect. Um, but I would say that's the big thing, is the idea that we might have thought wouldn't work. Like we're bringing back a lot of old stuff now because we have a different system that's utilizing it in a different way. And so though we weren't using that, 8 months ago because it would have failed, now it's back again, just used in a different context. So I think that's kind of the interesting thing to me, is that like the biggest lesson in the process is to just keep going and keep refining it and not necessarily throw away anything unless it was like directly harmful to a student, but we're not doing that. So
yeah, I think that's really interesting because yeah, it's not so much that it failed. It just, I mean, it depends on what your definition of failure is. I can't think of a time.
I think in the very beginning we failed a lot of teams and killed a lot of teams. But that was when we didn't know. We weren't like teaching, we were training.
When it was pure training, and so I think that while the in the short term we may have succeeded, in the long term we failed. Things that I've noticed that we have tried and that have not been, I think what we're getting to is that our definition of failure is it's not sustainable beyond us. Not that it's not effective or impactful or doesn't make the student a better driller. It's just, if you're offering a product and you're purporting to be a training organization, you should probably be able to do the stuff after we're gone. You touched on it, making routines for schools where we just tell them what it's going to be and choreograph it for them.
Zero of those.
The best case scenario is 2 kids quit, 1 kid moves away, 3 of them forget what the sequence was, and they all lose the videos. And so what you do is you come back next year and 1 student remembers exactly what you did the year before, and they weren't even the commander, so it didn't really, that has never worked. We have tried that, but again, we didn't try that because we wanted to try that. We tried that because we got asked to do that, and we tried to explain why it wouldn't work, and lo and behold, it does not work. The same thing with the training them just to make them good. I think we have been asked to do that, and it just does not work. My biggest
No.
failure, and this is the
Oh.
one. Okay, so in order to tell the story of my biggest failure, I have to tell the story of a drill team once upon a moon ago, where I was a technician and I'm a driller before I was a trainer or a coach or a choreographer or any of that other stuff. It's like I'm a driller. I was a driller. And so the technical aspect and my first coaching gigs were basically to be a technician and make the rifle do and the body do what we wanted it to do. I didn't have to worry about sustainability or really leading anything. I was just purely a technical guy. And so I think pre-COVID, I did a really great job of like going through the fundamentals with schools. I locked them into a fundamentals program. I showed them how to be really fundamentally strong drillers, like at a micro level. So really, really good technical ability. And I apologize, that's our dogs.
Bunny has
And
thoughts. Little Dottie.
and so we continue forward, and I'll never forget this. We go to a longtime client, and we hit the lunch break, and the unarmed team over their lunch break decided to use that to get online and scope out videos of a meet they were going to, recon the area in which that meet was occurring, and start to strategize about what was going on. The armed drill team decided this was the time that they were going to feed Cheetos to pigeons out in the courtyard. And I looked at all the armed drill teams I had worked with for this is probably legitimately what 5, 6, 7, 8 years at least, and there was outstanding physical talent and no thought whatsoever.
Well, I think at first, whenever like we started this and the teams were like all medium competitive, that was fine. And I think what we saw is in the reset, like after COVID, is that when the arm teams,
There was no substance for them to fall back on when the
Right.
when the physical talent regressed. There was no thought process. It was purely physical. It was purely stored in the body. And when the talent went away because it graduated over COVID, there was nothing left to. And honestly, we had to build those teams back up from the ground up. And then I did what I should always do and just do whatever Kirsten says is best to do. And what I learned is if the unarmed is doing it, that's probably the right thing to do. Just do that, but for the armed.
well, it's nice because the training is more evenly paced now. Because in those times, is we would have to tell the instructors is like, hey, it's going to look like the unarmed is doing nothing for like 3 years.
And it's going to feel like the armed is like rocketing ahead. And I think that yeah, right, that has leveled off completely. And I think it's built a better kind of student, a better kind of driller, and a better kind of. I'm far more happy with the fruits of our labor after I failed and moved on from what I was doing and stopped treating it like being a tech 100% of the
But I
time.
think that goes back to what we've already talked about is the pure training, I think, is where we've always seen at
And
some
yes,
point there not being sustainability
I guess
or longevity.
I can certainly be the best cadet commander for an armed drill team, being an old person who's done it for a long time at a high level. But I would say that constitutes a failure, right?
Yeah.
So that's a great question right off the rip. Going to question number 2, because again, we're just going for this. The question was, what ideas or methods for regulation did you teach that you knew were not correct, and why did you go about using them? And
As
to answer this question, yeah, we have to give some context based on the answer.
Okay, I think as a company, there's only ever been one real one
That we have willfully ignored the verbiage of a manual.
and I'm pretty sure that's doing adjust slings and that flinging it off the shoulder. Like that's the only one straight that like corporately we've just been teaching.
And we knew it was wrong. We knew it. Well, not wrong. We knew that it wasn't authentic. We taught it because we're already in a lot of made up land for sling arms and uncasing the colors to begin with, which it's supposed to be a non-precision movement. It's supposed to be done outside of scrutiny of the public, right? You're not supposed to uncase in front of people. And it's one of those things that we knew would look good. So I agree with you. I think that's probably
And honestly, now since we've gone back and done research and found a way to make it sustainable for high schoolers, this one is just as nice, the one we're doing now. We really should have changed it a lot sooner. There just wasn't an impetus until it got called out at one of the higher level meets and then got upheld by the host as, yeah, that's just straight up exhibition. So that's probably the only one, like,
corporately, yeah.
And I would say other, like, on the more personal level with the coaching, a long time ago, there were the blade hands.
Yeah, we used to. Okay, so my thing is we have to divide this into eras, because in the early era, we had a healthy blend of this is going to do well in competition and this is what the manual says, and we try to favor the manual except when we know this is a trick that would work. Over time, I think we have completely shifted out of that mindset, because if we're not trying to do what's authentic, what are we even doing here? The blade hands are a great example. Grabbing the rifle for order arms or coming up to port with an open hand, versus wrapping the fingers on
I
it.
think that was being justified.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Well, and that was technically being justified because there's no 1903 in the Marine Corps order.
So it was like, okay,
and
well,
at that time especially, there was nothing.
The only one I could think of was the and this falls again into a competitive like choice, and it's not necessarily like, okay, no, it's wrong. Is making sound on parade rest, specifically for
snatch,
Navy
yeah.
teams, specifically for going to Texas A&M for state. So, but that was also a choice made because we knew on the Aggie drill side that Aggies liked the snap, the pizzazz, the little extra like oomph behind what was happening. And like, especially having been on the inside of the briefing for judging at A&M, having gone there, having judged, like they don't, or they weren't saying what would be out of bounds in terms of the manual. And so it was like part of it was what was the engagement, how much energy were the students providing. So it made sense to just basically make noise on a move that doesn't necessarily say it doesn't make noise, but it definitely doesn't ask for noise. So it was a weird competitive gray area. But we also have stopped teaching that in terms of like doing that in the reg card. Correct. When in part, because it just you could wow the judges by just being really dang good at it. You didn't need to add in the sound effect to be good at it. Like it almost started to turn into feeling like it was compensating for not being sharp enough at the move versus where it initially came from. It wasn't a bonus.
Yeah, most of the things in this category, I think, as long as you made it good, would do just as. I think most tricks, people don't realize, they think the trick is the reason why the judges like it, and the reason why the judges like what they're doing is because they're good and they'd like them even if they didn't do the trick.
Yep.
Well, I think like other things that the only other purposeful thing was in that last year when we were coaching College Park, and honestly this was only because it was a time thing.
Oh, we didn't get on the M1s till within a month of the final meet.
And we just didn't. And honestly, actually, only other actually with the middle schoolers too, also with the M1s.
Okay, so we knew about when you come up to port with an M1 Garand specifically in the Marine Corps order specifically, you don't go forearm tight to the rifle.
It used to say.
It used to be that you went forearm parallel to the deck. We did not do that at Betachek over a decade ago.
And that was honestly only because we've never seen anyone do it, and we weren't sure
how it would fare.
I don't know.
No, it wasn't a thing. Probably would have just been really, really weird. And again, you spend a lot of your community family's money to go do something. Sometimes you make hard choices.
Going back today,
I would have cleaned it. I would have just cleaned the parallel. The same thing with on the M1 at trail arms, you're supposed to push it forward, kind of on guard style, like a 45-degree angle. You're supposed to push the barrel forward. We were within a month transitioning to that rifle, having not worked it the entire season. We knew that that was what was supposed to be done, and we didn't do it.
The instructors also consulted with some people who were like, yeah, honestly, it's not that big of a deal. I would just not worry about it.
But in retrospect, we would have gone back, got on the M1s earlier, and just cleaned the snot out of it because I think it would have looked so cool to do it well.
So I think that any of those things, even now a couple years removed, that we did on purpose,
quote unquote,
we would just go back and do what the manual says, because there's
not a single decision about what the question says, what methods did you teach that you knew were not correct, that we wouldn't go back and undo if we could.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no reason not to do the manual. I think the goal is, like, even if it would be weird, is you just have to get good enough at it
and it won't be weird.
It's not weird.
It won't be weird when you're good enough at it.
And I think one more just before we go on is the only other thing we've done, like, I think accidentally.
Oh, there's been lots of accidents. Oh, lots of accidents.
I think the biggest
lots of accidents,
and most of them are just because we either didn't read well,
or didn't realize, maybe.
Is like, I can think about, like, on the Air Force National or the Air Force Open one in Ohio, it's very small. And I know for a time we were teaching for the Air Force teams to call the forward march as the last person got in. And then it was actually your old instructor.
It was.
Who was judging, who called that out.
And said, you can't call forward march until DCID is reestablished.
Like, what the? And I went back and read it.
And it was like, oh, sure enough.
So then I know we've changed that since. So I think all the other things have just been misinterpretations or not reading closely enough.
Well, this question asked that you knew were not correct.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm saying, I wanted to point out that, like, we have done other ones, but, like, the only ever purposeful ones have usually been when we're actually coaching and when we therefore can make that decision and be responsible for it. But I think going back, if we were ever to coach again, which is not likely, is we would just as closely as we can do the manual and get good at it, and then either take the consequences or get so good that it wouldn't matter.
Okay. Question number 3. These don't get easier. Are there current trends or fads in any phase that you're hoping to die out, or general changes in drill team that you're hoping for in, say, the next 5 to 10 years? I actually, I'm sure we'll talk about it. I just want to preface this with, I think we're very happy with the trajectory of drill team right now in general. There's a lot, every generation has the sky is falling rhetoric about how drill team is dying. Drill team has never been dying. Drill team is just fine. It just changes. And what people perceive as dying is just them saying, I don't recognize what I'm seeing anymore. And that's fine, right? That happens in sports. That happens in arts. That happens everywhere. So I think before we hop in, the general disclaimer is, if we have to answer the question, sure. But there's a lot of great things happening right now.
I guess let's go by the regulation events and then the exhibition events. That would be probably the easiest. I think for the regulation events, we're working that way. As I think I'd really just like to continue to see teams push towards manual correctness over like party tricks, basically.
Yeah. I think especially when the teams get to the high level of competitiveness, and then they feel like there's something that they have to lose, and the question becomes, well, do I do what's right, and do I then maybe put myself out competitively because we are successful and I don't want to do that? I think I would like to see teams continue to resist that pressure and continue to try to be authentic, even when it might be questionable.
I will say, I don't like to pat ourselves on the back, but I do think one of the things that teams that we're either coaching or working with do very well is generally place well in regulation. And going back to the second question is, by and large, we try to steer people to be as accurate and faithful to their written manuals as possible. And they generally do very well. And I think what happens is people correlate the sharpness over necessarily what is actually happening. So I think on the regulation side, I'd like to see people commit to just being really, really good at doing what the word says and not just looking at whatever
happens to be winning.
Right. Which most of the time what happens to be winning, they could do it right and they'd still win.
I'd say 100% of the time. I've never seen an example when, if a team was doing something wrong, they next year did it right at the same level, that it would have cost them. I've never seen that ever.
So I think on the regulation side, that's a pretty easy. That's been our stance from
early on.
And it's getting there. I think it's going in the right direction.
I'm happy with the direction that those events are going by and large. I think with every passing year, there are more instructors that we talk to who say, if we're not doing the manual, what are we doing here? What am I teaching my students? I think that's great. 10 years ago, no. 10 years ago, it was more people saying, well, I know this is going to win at my meet, so we're just going to do it because I know it's going to win. Now those people are in the mind, and we still have those people. We still talk to those people. Those people are in the extreme minority to where they stand out as that being kind of antiquated of a stance to take. Maybe we have a biased sample size and we only talk to people that, care about things that we care about, but that's been very encouraging. The exhibition one for me is easy. I can talk about this very easily.
I'm overall relatively happy where unarmed exhibition is going. I think the biggest thing is people need to, I don't have any thoughts on like stylistically where unarmed exhibition should be going. I think the biggest thing is wherever you are, what I'd like to see is a recommitment back to excellence in whatever it is they're doing. So it can't be we don't like this style because it's not military. We don't like this because of that. I think most people, when they see something as not military, what they're really seeing is they're not very good at
Yeah, it's a
executing
poor
it.
execution.
So I really think in terms of unarmed exhibition, the thing that I'd like to see is not getting so stuck in like what we're doing, but maybe get a focus back on how we're doing it. And I think that a lot of the conversations around unarmed exhibition would just disappear if everybody was very good at what it is they were doing.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, there's no trends within exhibition right now that I wish would go away on the unarmed side. At least I don't really watch enough on the armed side to have more of an opinion there. Like I have one, but it's not a fully educated one, so it's going to keep to myself. But in the unarmed exhibition side, I think one thing I am hoping happens is honestly an uptick in the appreciation and understanding of step, which I do think comes back to what you're talking about of like having the execution rise, because I think we brush off accidentally a lot of really cool and unique skill sets in unarmed exhibition because it's maybe not performed well enough to appreciate what's actually trying to be done. Um, so I do hope that we delve deeper in that realm, which I guess in reality boils down to I hope we just get more rhythmically complex and actually make music with unarmed exhibition because you can. Like you really can. Um and on that is I hope that it in all exhibitions honestly because it's you're creating art and I don't think we're appreciating that enough that like students are creating this vision and then enacting it and performing it in front of so many different people and it's like it's performance art, right? Is I would love to see more just storyline artistic like value in the exhibitions. um and obviously you can do that while still staying within the bounds of military. You still have locked in bearing. That's like my biggest thing about exhibition is like everybody can have bearing, but I would love to see the exploration of exhibition as an art demonstration be explored more. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, pretty much all of that, but also for armed exhibition. Just gonna co-sign that. Because I do think the biggest trend right now that I think is a problem, and I know it's a problem, is the accidental reducing of what armed exhibition is down to spinning a gun. And we
Mm,
tell this to every single school, and we have not been shy about it on this podcast or in our short form content on social media. If you reduce the active armed exhibition down to the physical manipulation of an 8.5 pound drill rifle, the only place where you will go over time, I'm talking about being sustainable, going back to question one, the only place
mm,
that will end is accidentally selecting for more physically developed students. And I don't think that that's intentionally what anyone wants. No one wants to exclude, for example, students who are going to hit puberty later than their peers. No one wants to exclude those
right.
students. no one would wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to make standards for my drill team that exclude people who are less developmentally mature than the people around them, or female cadets. No, I don't think. Well, I won't say that. I think that no one isn't harmfully and maliciously wanting to say, I'm going to make a routine so hard that only my most physically developed male students can achieve it. Or at least I would hope they wouldn't be sitting around saying that. That'd be super weird and jacked up.
Right. But I guess the accidental thing is
the accidental thing, and the thing that's so insidious about it is what you said, Cheeto, is if you don't think about it like you're trying to say something and you're using the medium of military exhibition drill to do it, you might accidentally wind up in a place that you don't want to be. I fear, and this question asked, what do you hope to see in the next 5 to 10 years? I hope to see more armed exhibition that's driven by a creative vision and that uses the manipulation of the rifle and the body to bring that vision to everybody that sees it, and less of the act of armed exhibition is twirling a gun. There are already wonderful places to go to do that. Those places will always be superior to what it is that we're doing. I would like to see us lean into what makes military exhibition drill unique, and I think in doing that, that would be a huge net positive for the activity in general.
Definitely.
Question number 4.
Well, you might as well do 4 and 6 and kind of just read them both because they're kind of going to have almost the same answer.
Okay, yeah, we'll go with question 4 and question 6. Question 4 asks, how best can I work with instructors that are reluctant to some or any drill practicing techniques that aren't just quote unquote running it? And question 6 asks, how do you approach conversation with instructors who are wary of any new techniques or methods of drill and convince them that this is the right thing? Like I said, there are no bad questions in this batch.
None.
Okay. So
I'll yap last.
I was going to say, I think, so the first thing, let's talk about coaching. Like you're with a team or group and talk about from that perspective first. Because I think there's really, I guess first and
there's
foremost,
definitely 2 approaches.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, you need to have a long conversation with your instructor that you're working with about their expectations of you and what they want from you. Because if they just want you to come in and help what they're already doing, these questions may not apply because they may not be interested and looking for you to make those types of changes.
That's
right,
actually
like
where
if they basically hired you as a tech.
Yes.
Because you being young and excited coming into something where somebody else already has an idea or where like they have actual ownership in that, like the school hired them. I think we see that's where we see a lot of friction where you have great ideas and they probably will work, but the instructor will let you do it because they don't want to be mean to you, and then the moment you leave, they'll just go back to whatever it is they were doing. So I think first you need to establish whether or not the instructor is what basically they want from
what
you.
what your role in the process really is. It's very hard to get to that because you have to drill down through, like, they're not 99% of times they're not going to come out and just tell you, hey, here are the boundaries in which you can operate. We want you to do X, Y, and Z. You're going to do X, Y, and Z. I feel very fortunate early on because those boundaries were made very clear to me. And I think that most people don't get those. So yeah, I think that's part of I agree with that.
Well, and I do think that it is about finding that balance, right? Because if not, you run the risk of ruining the relationship with the instructor and like the school as a whole by accidentally delving into something you were not hired to do. And by that measure too is even in that initial conversation, I think it would be finding out exactly what different types of coaching actually looks like, not just within the drill like realm, but go watch actual or like footage of coaches talking about their jobs and what that looks like to even understand what you're asking the instructors. Hey, would you like me to do this? Is this on the docket of stuff I'm responsible for? Like, because the instructors also probably haven't lived through it, so they don't even know what to tell you not to do until it happens. So I would also say it's not just about establishing on the front side what your role is. It's about doing a constant follow up on what your role is every time something is happening, so that if anything starts to shift, you can catch it right away with the instructor and pivot if needed, um, within that.
I agree. And then I think on a secondary piece, still on the coaching side, you have to look
Mhm.
at your age. I think the younger you are, meaning like the closer to you have just been in high school you are, is I would say start very slow. Part of being able to do new things and having them trust you is having a relationship with them, or
Mhm.
basically that's one thing. And then having done it for a long time and having more and more experience, where when you're us and you've been doing this, as a company for going on 14 years, I think there's a little bit more leeway that we have versus when we first started out
Well,
doing this.
and even when that's the case, and even when you can show the fruit of your system, you still run into
Yep.
that tension and that rub, because at the end of the day, um, I think anyone, obviously I know who asked these questions, and anyone who asked this question understands that there's a better way to do drill team, but that better way to do it is very, very foreign and imposed upon this activity from an outside angle. Remember, we always talk about like being an athletic performing art, meaning that we don't just get the sports, and we get the best of the sports, and we get the best of the arts. And a lot of the times the things that are being asked about in these questions are things that are so foreign to the concept of military drill that even
Mhm.
with that pedigree, it rubs
Oh,
at the
yes.
very least, it creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates, friction.
So I would say start slow, build trust, like one thing at a time, like tiny things. And then
Yes.
if you do this right and you build that relationship, you will have more and more leeway as you go. But I would say Matt's right. Is even if the College Park thing was a special thing because
The premise of the conversation on the onset was, hey, I know that you've been doing this for a long time. We are willing to do 100% of what you ask us to do, to make sure to, obviously it's going to benefit us, and what you're going to find out is whether what you're teaching people actually works. And so that's a little bit different of a conversation when you go into it. That's the only time. Everywhere else.
And then except when I was in the middle school and he had no idea about the unarmed that first year, he said, "You have them."
I guess that's
Whatever."
true. Yeah.
But other than that, I think that if we could go back and tell younger us, we would probably say take it slow, because
Go in and tech first.
we've never made it past
Yes.
probably 2 or 3 years with a program, because at the end of the day we push too far too fast and it gets to a point where there is friction. So I think if we could go back and advise younger us, we would say take your time, make the system that currently is better,
Yes.
develop the relationship.
Earn the trust, and when the trust has been earned, then it's like, hey, can we try this in squads and then ranks instead of just doing it all
In
together
all
first?
reality, unless you go into the military and become an instructor yourself, you're probably never going to get to the point where you can enact everything that you want to enact, unless unless you can work at the school, or you have the opportunity to be somewhere very, 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 very long term, probably 5+ years. Is I would say baby changes and just do what you can where you're at.
And then on the training front, so that's on the coaching front. On the training front's really, really easy, because you're probably not, if you are, and again, coaching and consulting both fall under the umbrella that we just talked about. When you're talking about training, you're talking about short spans of time, so you don't have to convince anyone of it. You just have to get them to agree to the term of employment that you have. So, like, for example, maybe it's 3 days, or maybe it's a week long little camp, or whatever you might be doing. And I think one of the things that we've learned to do, and have done more frequently, is start from the premise of, hey, we're going to do things a little bit differently during this workshop, camp, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to ask you to go along with that and try it. One, because there's value to learning new things. It's always good to learn new things. And then two, if we could, if what you want is for us to do what you do, but better with more experience behind it, we actually don't have that. You have more experience doing you, and you do you better.
Right. I do think from like the consulting where you're only there 2 or 3 days, it's much easier because it's like, hey, we're doing a bunch of things. Here are new ideas for you to try.
Just give it a shot. And at the end of the, we'll try it this. If you're a consultant, we'll try it this week, and if you don't like it, don't do it. And then tell me about it. If we're doing a camp, hey, try it for these 3 days. If we leave here and you hated it, then at the very least you learned something that you hated, and you'll never do that again. Right. So I do think it becomes a lot easier on the training side of like, hey, let's just try this together. And then there's no way to have the conversation and convince them with your words. You just kind of have to go through the process and show them by the fruits of your labor and by the fruits of the work that you put in that it's going to bear a positive result. And in 3 days, it's possible to do that, right? I think then they may be convinced, oh, maybe it's a good idea to work in squads instead of just do it over and over as a platoon. But yeah, I think on the training front, that's a much easier non-conversation. It's just about setting it up from the get-go and then letting them experience it, and then letting them know that the worst thing that happens from that experience is they've discovered one more way that will not work for them, and that's valuable too.
Yeah.
And I think everyone feels better about that as a result.
Yeah, I would say the big thing for me in both the coaching and the training, and specifically based on it saying like how do you approach the conversation, so not just how do you even do things differently with somebody, but in having the conversation with the instructors, I think one of the biggest aspects to it being successful is actually hearing what the instructor has to say about what they're currently doing, and like letting them know on the front side, hey, gonna try this, especially in the coaching realm, gonna try this new thing or have this new idea, and being able to basically validate the instructor's experience first, that like what you're doing is working, it clearly has worked, and then essentially once you have that level of relationship with the instructor, being able to do a slow progression with the data to back up why you're doing what you're doing. So I think that is also something that comes into play a lot, is anytime that we do come into something that instructor might be resistant towards or might not be immediately okay with, like they just don't trust it yet, um, does generally stem back to having the relationship built with them. But it generally means that what we will then do is continuously explain the data, the experiences, our lived experience of it, working with it, so that it's not just coming from a, hey, I just randomly think this would be cool, so I'm going to try this on your children and your program. It's being able to back it up with actual data and explanations. And generally, if you do that enough times, they will start to trust that you have a reason for everything you're doing and it's not just based on a whim. And then also, I think one of the biggest things is being able to demonstrate with the students that there is actual proof of excellence is being achieved. And at a minimum, if it's not excellence, you have to be able to do whatever you're doing has to increase engagement. The students have to feel better doing the new thing than what the old thing would be like. Otherwise, it's definitely going to get shot down, because if the instructor's not super engaged with it yet and your students are not engaged with it, there's no way whatever you're trying is going to stick. So if it can't be guaranteed that there's engagement with the process, then it's probably an idea that is not worth the relationship with the school and the instructor, even if it would make them better drillers. So I think that's another part of it, is like when approaching the conversation is knowing that you are trying to change a system and having the space for that conversation, and not being personally offended if the instructor is not really about it until you've developed a relationship long enough for them to trust whatever is happening.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. Next question. And we'll just go around. I'm gonna modify this just a little bit. So top three, and then your one. What traits in cadets do you recognize as predicting success in drill team, commanding, etc.? So give us your top three, and then what traits are bad predictors of actual success over the season? Give us your like red flag trait from a student or a cadet on a team.
Mhm. Am I going first? Pancho, you
Yeah.
wanna hit this one first?
I mean, I don't know that I have a top 3.
I don't have a top 3.
Top 1, your top trait.
I mean, okay. I think a love of learning.
Ooh.
That's
For
my
me,
top,
Ooh.
is the one that has fun while learning. I'm not even kidding, it's what I wrote down.
Oh, snap.
like, I think if you're not afraid of learning and you like the learning process, that's probably for me the number one predictor of like, because then like if something's challenging, it's not scary
Yes.
and it's not intimidating, because if you like to learn, then you're never going to have an issue like with getting bored or getting discouraged, because like part of the
Mhm.
process is the boredom and
Resilience.
and the
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Wow, see, that's why that's 100%. You both had that? That was both of yours?
Yeah, mine is, it's not just the, like, learning, but it's the having fun working within something. So, like, basically enjoys being challenged. Um, and then this isn't really a trait, but it's a way that I try to identify said trait, outside of the obvious of them, like, being excited doing the thing or, like, being excited learning, is ones that will specifically make eye contact with you and others, not just the teacher, but other students while learning
Oh,
or working on something, and then will follow up with questions, because it means they didn't just stare at you and input information, they
oh,
digested it,
so like
processed it, and came back. So
you're
it's
like
learning.
an engaged learner.
Yeah, and that's, so to me that's like, I had the they have fun while learning as the trait, right? And then the ways of like figuring out what that might look like. And I think
snap.
the biggest one is not just the eye contact with the teacher, it's the eye contact with the fellow students after the teacher's done talking. Because any student can be respectful because they've been trained to be respectful of adults or authority. But do they actually respect and respond to each other? So that was mine.
I think if I had to pick a number 2, it would then be like, how much do they care about the learning of the people around them?
Yep.
So like, do they figure it out and then go and help the people around them, or do they encourage the people around them to not give up? Do they keep the environment positive so that like their peers continue to like to be in part of the process?
Yeah, I was gonna say my
Mm-hmm.
number 1 is maturity, and then you just dropped all of that, and now I feel like that's insufficient.
But I
Um,
think that's a
that's a
That's a
but
showcase of maturity.
but to go down what Cheeto said of like how would I know that someone has maturity, maybe beyond their time in high school, is what you said, which is that if the person is not interested, if the progress of others and the advancement of others excites them
Mm-hmm.
and fulfills them, that is a green flag trait that they're going to be successful in whatever position you put them in.
Yeah.
Which makes my red flag trait, and I think that this is, we talk to teams and instructors about this all the time. My red flag trait is they're very excited about progressing and improving, but they are very excited about their progress and their improvement, because there's a lot of things that you can train, and there's a lot of things that you can instill, and there's a lot of things that you can teach. But my red flag is I'm only as interested in this as it impacts me. And I don't want to reduce that to selfishness, because a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's insecurity, and a lot of times it's unfulfillment in other areas of life, and they're being filled up in this area because it's the first thing that they've discovered, and they're so hungry and thirsty for that fulfillment that they will take it, and it'll be like a scarcity mindset of like, I'm really filling my own cup up, and I need to have that from this activity. I think that would be my red flag trait.
well, I think the question specifically is, what traits are bad predictors of actual success over the season?
Talent.
And I think for
Talent.
me,
Yeah.
Talent is almost not a predictor at all.
Well, because I think what makes it hard, and like, we just you know, we've been focusing a lot on like teaching and like working with like leaders and stuff, is I think the people we have found that struggle the most with staying engaged or like liking teaching are the people who are naturally talented, because
100%.
it's harder for them to relate to the people who struggle or who are slower learners, because they cannot, like, it takes a lot for them to fathom, like, what do you mean you don't just understand?
Well, and for those people, if they don't innately have an enjoyment and a fulfillment in helping others, you know, I was a person for whom drill came very naturally, because I was in martial arts and because I was a yo-yoer and I had hand-eye coordination, and because I was in marching band, which is just drill with music, or it was when I was in it. I don't know if that would have translated nearly as well today, but the thing that could have been really bad for me is if I wasn't interested in the thing that always excited me was as soon as I figured something out, I like obnoxiously wanted to share it with somebody else. I mean, that's like,
Yes.
like
You still do
I
that.
still do that. And I think if you don't have that, if you're just talented, that you're not going to make it where you want to make it. But a lot of people misread that confidence and that talent as leadership and maturity, and they assume that when you give somebody that role, that the role will compel them to want to help other people. The responsibility will compel them to want to help other people, and that's just not true.
Yeah, I
Well,
think that.
and I would say even in that, and kind of going back to um the concept of like, if they're all about like celebrating their own successes, and that they can't fathom somebody else not getting it, is it also makes it, at least what I've found in doing this, is it makes it hard to help them actually be good teachers, or even good like coaches' eyes. Like, not even just teaching the material, they struggle to even see what is going wrong with someone else trying to do it. Like, in a way that meaning they can't diagnose the issue. They can see something is wrong and they'll be like, "Oh, well, you're not good at it," or you're not doing this. Don't do that. Or, "Hey, this is what's wrong. You didn't land the trick. You didn't do this sharp enough." And because their bodies just naturally did the thing, or their brains just clicked and they got it, they literally cannot even see the why. So then it's not even their fault that they start to get frustrated with the slower learners. They start to make sure that if someone's not automatically good, there's not really space, and they build routines or help support routines that will cut out people that don't catch on quickly, because they don't have the words to catch them up. They don't even have the eyes to diagnose the issues. All they can see is that issues exist.
The number of
And
drill
so
teams who self-select
it
for
kills
fast
them
learning killer, and it's more teams
so
than you would think.
much.
The
Well, and
bias.
it's so disappointing because they're not trying to do that. This is
No,
almost never, I can think of like maybe one example where it's ever come from actual like malicious thought of like, if
you
you
didn't get
don't
it
catch
fast
this as
enough.
fast
You're
as I
out.
am, get the heck out. Right. It is almost never that. But I would actually say that makes it harder to deal with, because it's like, "I'm so sorry, naturally talented person that zoomed through this and caught all the way up. And because of that, got put in a leadership position. You need to slow down."
I mean, it's promoting to
That's a
failure.
huge ask.
I guess the best way to put it would be the number of programs who accident. I mean, this is a phenomenon in the corporate world that promote people to failure
Yep.
is insane,
Well,
and definitely the ultimate problem that this will, like, you'll run into with this.
I think I've seen it expressed on the unarmed side. You usually see that just expressed as like frustration with like their.
Yes.
But on the arm side, like the amount of like really talented spinners that like when you put them in a teaching position, who they will look you in the face and be like, "I'm horrible at teaching. I don't want to do that." And you'll be like, "But you're so good." They're like, "Yeah, I'm bad at teaching. I can't do it." And you're like, "You haven't even tried." And they're like, "I just can't do it." Like there's a
Yeah.
like large number of like.
And yet those are the commanders, those are the people who are expected by their programs and by their instructors to teach the new ones.
And the thing, and it is because they don't know how, because they
Yep.
are just good at it. So I don't know. I think for
Yep.
me the number one that thing that's not a good predictor is like natural talent.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would definitely agree with that. And I would also say that the natural talent makes it hard on the team's like culture environment where the people, because of that frustration, like especially on the unarmed side, right, is you see that frustration come out in the team dynamics of how they interact with each other, and you just watch it kill the entire like actual culture, the vibe, the space for the students of the team just starts to slowly die off until they just go through the motions. um so I would also say people that like, it's in terms of traits that you're that would be a bad predictor is not just the talent, but it's also the people that learn really quickly. um because if they're not, which I mean is a kind of sideways version of talent. But it's the learning really, really quickly also can sometimes look like the same result. They might not be good at it, but if they can learn it quickly, then they don't have the patience for people that learn slower. So I would say that like
Yep.
impatience and talent are your two biggest. i- if your team commanders, leaders, or the ones you're hoping to be that do not have an endless supply of patience, you've got to have someone else in that leadership role that is going to balance that out on them. Because if that is also a skill that if you don't have that going into this, or some form of grace and patience, that will also burn you out. Even if all the rest of the qualities are great, an impatient commander can also kill the team.
That is true. Okay, we're into the final questions here. Um, getting back into the regulation and color guard arena. What prompts a change in the and how I think the question is what prompts a change in how we're interpreting and therefore teaching people how to do the manual. This one is pretty straightforward.
I love this question.
What a great
Data.
question. They're all great questions.
Okay, obviously, first and foremost, any update in the manual.
Like when the actual manuals get updated. Easy.
Yeah. Yep.
Then from there, I really think for us, now we are very blessed that we get to travel the country and interact with
People of a wide swath of backgrounds. We
not just
such
services, but like eras.
so yes, across services, then across eras. So we have people that are recently in, we have people that have been out for 18 years and they're finishing their careers. We and then on top of that, a wide swath of people doing different training related jobs in different capacities. And we have met just some of the coolest people ever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in that second layer, so obviously changing the manual, I think conversations with people and not just individual, because I think that the tendency is like, oh, I had a conversation with one person. They said they would do it like X, Y, and Z. And then we're like, well, that's the rule. That's how it's going to be done. It's like, no, I think for us, it's the aggregation of multiple conversations of people of
Yep.
equal credibility across a wide range of
Correct.
eras and services and so forth. So talking to people who were, for example, drill instructors, but they were drill instructors long ago, versus people who just got into their junior ROTC careers and more recently were involved on the training front, right? You can't just have a conversation with one person who seems to have credibility and change your whole interp of what's going on. You have to have layers of conversations where you have one conversation with one and they say something. And so you go to the next person, you say, hey, you know, if you saw X, Y, and Z, what would you think about that particular thing? They might give you a completely different insight. And between those two things, as you continue to have these conversations, you will find a through line that will help you adjust your interpretation or give you context.
Well, and I think a really good example is we can take you kind of through the evolution of like colors reverse.
Yes, perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
So when we first started this, back, 2013, when I was in high school, between my junior and my senior year, I did the version where you pivot. And then I did a version that had a crossover, but it ended up having everybody on all sides crossover. So even, in that 10, 11, 12, 13 time frame, there was debate on, is it a cross or is it a pivot? Right? Because if you don't know, when you go back and read the manual, it basically, the pivot that it describes is a face and marching. right? And so when we started working and we consulted people, the consensus was, yeah, it says a face in marching, but that's not the correct use of that pivot. It only describes it from the halt. If you were in motion, like you would never.
Why would you say march and then come to a halt immediately thereafter?
Or if you had that foot, you would never cross over on that foot.
If basically lots of strong arguments that was not the case.
And the person who was making the argument had a
extremely credible.
Their track record was, through the roof, probably some of the most competitive results, period. And so it's like, okay. Well, so for a long time, we've just basically
the concept.
And it wasn't just him. It's in talking to people, even like literally at
last week, in Colorado, within 2 weeks.
We were talking to somebody who was a drill sergeant whenever they still had 3 different training, areas in the Army. And, he was like, yeah, when they came out with that and we all looked at that and we're like, what the heck? Like,
why would you ever do that? That doesn't make any sense.
And so, and it wasn't until recently when a retired instructor we knew went to Fort Jackson, where drill sergeant school was, and he went and he asked those drill sergeants,
like, hey, check this out. It says faces in march, take 1 full step, 3 half steps. What would you say right now? That they said, okay, well, you take 1 step forward. It says faces in march, so you got to put the ball of your right foot on the ground. So I put the ball of the right foot on the ground, and then I would step over with my other foot, my left foot, and I would faces in march with a full step, full 30. And so that then informed.
So then we tried it, and we didn't like it, right? Because it felt weird.
And as a side note, I think because we're addressing the network specifically, and then anyone else out listening, is like the faster you can get rid of things and like caring whether you like something or not, the faster you can release yourself of your own cage of biases, the better and less frustrating your life will be, because we definitely hated this, but that's not really a relevant criteria for evaluating an interpretation of the manual.
No.
Well, you can still like or dislike things. It just doesn't dictate what you do about it.
But
just
yeah,
to be clear.
It doesn't. There's not.
But you can still dislike things. That's not what's being said.
Well, and so, and then now in spending time with it is a couple of things I think, to me, there are a couple of things I think now that I would say about this. I would say that all of the people who say this is the incorrect use of the pivot are probably correct.
If that many people over this large of a span of time who have equally credible backgrounds are saying that doesn't make any sense, because why would you do that?
And because when you read the manual, color guard is not mentioned in the uses of that pivot. The pivot is only described as being used from the halt, So I think those people are right. But however, in spending time now doing the move by place with the left guard or the organizational flag, and spending time and putting that foot down and doing it, the steps work that way. When you do the pivot version, steps cannot physically work. There's not room to take a full step for the left guard
and a half step for the organizational bearer.
When you do that as a pivot, when you're going into your 3rd half step, there's not room to take the step when you're trying to follow. But when you do the face and marching version, all the steps work. The other thing that happens is the 2 guards end up pivoting at the same time.
Which seems like a logical thing that somebody that had a ceremonial background would want to see.
Which wouldn't surprise me, because we know that like the grip in the Marine Corps order that just changed.
It went from 2 points of black to 1 point of black because an 8th and I drill master got on the committee, and 8th and I closes the thumb. Right.
Yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me if some honor guard type person got in there and said, hey, this is really cool.
This is what we do when we do it. It makes it look really sharp.
And so while I believe the people who say the pivot is being used out of context, I'm also relatively sure that it was meant to be used because the steps work and the way it coordinates the guards. So I think everybody's right in this scenario.
And I think it, talking about like what the interpretation thing, I think if you're trying to make a science out of an art, that you will always be unsatisfied, because things are we tell the schools all the time, things are constantly changing. The manuals are being rewritten. Who uses the manuals in the military is constantly changing. Their interpretations of what is happening is constantly changing. So it might seem contradictory to say, I think the people who say it should be a pivot are right. They're probably correct. And I think the people who say it is a crossover faces in March those people are right too. I think if you think it's a science, then one has to be right and one has to be wrong.
Well, because then going like into the Marine Corps, you have to look at how drill is being taught in San Diego versus in Parris Island. And, you know, we do a lot of aggregating the two and finding a way that doesn't matter where they trained or were trained, that when they see it, it's recognizable.
And every instructor that we've ever spoken to is fine with the idea that any ism is okay unless it's contradicted by the words of the actual Marine Corps order, right? And that's kind of the litmus test.
Another thing that we just learned, and that's coming up that we haven't had the chance to teach yet.
Rifle manual while marching for the Army, PICA, preparatory command, intermediate step, command of execution, additional step, action step. For the longest time, the Marine Corps, we looked this up in Colorado. Marine Corps says on the next foot, you begin the rifle manual after command of execution.
The Army training circular only tells you what foot to call it on.
And it gives you PICA in the end. So why wouldn't it be left shoulder, step, arms, step, started on the next step? And why wouldn't you put the additional step in there? We just never thought of that. So
and the person who told us, he was like, that's what I taught when I was a drill sergeant. It's what I teach my students. And I was like, well, did anybody say anything when you competed? He said, nope.
Not a, I was like, I've never seen that before. That's so interesting. And you learn stuff. So,
well, and the thing is, it has to be right, because that's how we're justifying in colors reverse.
The colors reverse got to take one additional step when it doesn't say it. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a constant dialogue. It's not making an art into a science. I think.
Well, and it's finding credible people who did training while they were in the military.
And I will say, not going to those people trying to find the right answer or justify your own belief, but having an earnest, open conversation about what they have experienced and what they understand.
You learn so much, because then when you get the errors and you talk to them, then you start to learn okay, this is the same throughout all of these people, or this was clearly
there's a generational divide where, for example, drill sergeants that are served long ago think that center on an even numbered front is left of center, and the guide does not count. And newer drill instructors who are drill instructors later in time, closer to modern era, think that the guide does count when in line, but goes away and does not count in column.
Depending on who you talk to in the Army, some of them will tell you that not allowing the arms to swing outward means not swinging at all.
And some will tell you that it
just
means
keep them close to your body.
Keep them, don't helicopter them away.
And those type of things, like the centering or like
the arm swing, the rear march,
is we would tell instructors, you need to go to the host of whatever competition you're going
to. Let the host clarify. Make them clarify and write
it. Judges, when there are things like that, we would say, well, you know what? Either one is fine, as long as you're doing one of the two things that's a valid interpretation that we've heard over time. Do that.
I think that for some people that'll be like a really enlightening answer, and for some people that will be deeply unsettling and dissatisfying, because I think what a lot of people want, and sometimes what we can't give them, is just the right answer. There is no right answer.
I don't know. As English majors, it's not hard for us.
See, this is good. Here's the follow-up to this. In the case of treating, this is easy too. In the case of treating as an art, not a science, then when judging, will we consider a manual discrepancy? Is the litmus test you mentioned, as long as it's not contradicted? The litmus test is, and this is not official, this is just the Drill Team Dynamics litmus test. Would a reasonable person reading the same manual be able to defend beyond a reasonable doubt their interpretation of that manual? So let's break that down. Reasonable being like a person that's involved in the activity, not someone just coming in and throwing stuff out there. Reading the same manual, so not being informed by external sources like depot orders or the way that we did it in 19 whatever. Reading the same manual, be able to defend their interpretation beyond a reasonable doubt.
And not just, it doesn't say.
Because beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard, not a preponderance of the evidence. A preponderance of the evidence means 51% I can prove that my way is right. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, if there's a reasonable doubt that what you're doing could be correct, then it's not a discrepancy, right? So we're not looking for a preponderance of the evidence. We're looking for beyond a reasonable doubt.
And that's why we're always learning, because when people come to us, is we want to hear what they're saying, because
and as civilians, we can never be the authoritative doctrinal source of military. That's insane.
And also, just because we're teaching all the services, even if we had gone, we would have only been able to go into
one of them. You know what I mean?
I guess there's
three of us, we got gotten
but-
3. But yeah, as a judge, if they can defend it beyond a reasonable doubt, like there's a reasonable doubt about the colors reverse for sure.
I think, well,
the not the pivot version. There's
Okay.
the crossover version. I think there's a reasonable doubt about whether you cut the hand after you lower the staff in uncasing the colors, because it says lower same as present guide on, and then when you read present guide on, it says when the staff has been lowered to horizontal.
And then the question is, does same as mean exactly the same as, or does it just mean the
Well,
lower?
and it hinges on the word lower. Once you bring the word lower into it, you cut the hand when you're done lowering. You're not lowering anymore. That's a reasonable doubt. That's not preponderance of the evidence. That's a reasonable doubt enough to not call it a manual hit in that particular instance, if that makes sense. That's a great follow-up question. So the follow-up is then with doing the manual cap thing, which you can read all about if you're listening to this outside JROTC I'm sorry, JROTC Brief your own judges. Click. It'll talk about the manual caps. The idea that you can only attain a certain score if you are doing something outside the manual. Would you recommend pushing for fighting certain things to instructors when the points would make the difference? You have to be 100% sure that when you show the manual and you bring that up, let's say for some reason you even got into a conversation with the instructor, which we don't recommend score sheet review, so that would probably never happen. But let's say it's on the phone afterwards. You'd have to be able to 100% show that there is no reasonable doubt as to the interpretation that you were enforcing. So, like, I'll do an extreme example. You manual cap a team for bending their knee on a facing movement, and they are Air Force or Marine Corps. They come back and say, well, blah, 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 blah. You show the manual and you say, hey, it says straight leg right here. Boom. That's the kind of defense you have to be able to lodge. What oftentimes people will try to do, and I don't think they mean it maliciously, they're advocating for their students, they'll try to come back and say, well, the manual doesn't say I can't.
So for like example, when we were judging on the East Coast and there was the one Air Force team that was stomping on all of their pivots,
we said we manual cap the pivots, the flanks, and said you can't stomp the foot. The instructor says, show me where it says I cannot. And the response to that is, sir or ma'am, unfortunately, that's not how we read manuals in the military.
And they took that as, well, okay, so it's just your opinion. That's great. That's just competition. And they walked away.
And so that was fine. Like, Roger that. Because you're not going to win everybody.
By and large, we will generally tell an instructor, we had another one when we were sort of out west, and they all saluted during Eyes Right. And, I let the instructor know, hey, really only the commander. And he came back with what the manual says. And I said, okay. And then I just walked away because at that point, well, one, I was in the middle of judging. I couldn't stop and look that up. But if you're that sure and the student was there and they're like, well, and the instructor's like, no, I got this. But yeah, the manual says we do it this way. And I said, okay, that's fine. Because I think it really just depends on where they are. Because I think as a judge talking to instructors, a lot of times they view you as the opposition. When it really, that would be one of the fads, right? I hope someday that we can view that the judges and instructors can be viewed together,
as a team of educators working to bolster and edify their students.
But in all honesty, if an instructor is combative, I usually just let that go, and then they can either come back around when they are less frustrated, because again, they're really just thinking about defending their students, right? You can either let them come back around, or you just let them go on their way, because if they weren't interested in your feedback to begin with, there's not really much you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
All right. Anything else on that one? Cheeto, do you have anything that we did not cover that you would like to add before we hit our last 2?
No.
Okay. Maybe niche, but explain y'all's opinion. I didn't skip one, right? No, I did not.
No.
Maybe niche, but explain y'all's opinion on what you've encountered with the idea that more practice does not always equal better results all the time. The correlation between amount of practice and results, in terms of like actual results on the drill. I have something on this, but I'll yap last.
Okay.
I think. Go ahead.
I'll say, do you want to go ahead?
No, that's fine.
Go back to the question, Matt, so I can see it with my eyeballs.
With the idea, and what we've encountered with the idea that more practice does not equal better results all the time.
Okay, I think overall this is less relevant today because I think most teams could benefit from more practices. Right now, I would say by and large, we're seeing teams that are practicing 2 or 3 times a week for like an hour in the morning.
Gone are the days of anyone doing 2 hours after school every day. Like those are rare. There's some. They're a rarity. Very rare.
But I think, you know, we've been listening to a lot of like music educators recently and like listening to them talk, and like I think we're in agreement here is like what they seem to have found is it's not really about length of time, it's more about quality of time. So like for reading, like what she tells her students is like when they ask like how much they should practice, and I just watched a video where it's like, I want you to practice each of your thing 5 times, you know, and then once you've gone through all the way 5 times, that's enough practice. So I really think it comes down to the time you really should practice the amount of time that you need to accomplish whatever it is versus just practicing arbitrarily or like
correlating hours with results, basically. In theory, unless you're dirtling around, more hours will equal some results. The question is whether that's actually beneficial.
Well,
yeah,
I think with teaching today, there's just so many more efficient ways. Like, because when we were in high school, we practiced 2 hours after school every single day, you know, and then 4 hours every Saturday. I don't think we needed that much time to be that good. I think if we had been more efficient with our time, or like once we reached our level of like proficiency, we probably could have done less and used our time to do other things and still maintained like the level that we were at and had maybe more energy or
yeah, I think there is a fine line. And it really does come down to quality. If you can have prolonged quality for a long practice multiple times a week, awesome. Keep going, because I do think there is something that it like there is something to be said about the level of fun when you just actually dedicate that much of what you are doing to this thing. Like being on a team that takes it that seriously is what caused me to move from New York to Texas in my junior year of high school. Like you could just feel that the team cared that much. So I do think there's the level of also not just assuming that you're going to get quality out of it, but that if you practice that much, you must care that much. Um, and I think that's a really easy trick to facilitate a false environment for basically like companionship and culture on a team is if we just spend all of our time together, we will like each other, we will drill like each other. And I mean, we've seen that there's science behind the more time you spend with the people that you surround yourself with, the more similar your brains will start to legitimately actually think, meaning your timing and your execution and your synchronization on the drill team would theoretically start to meld together because you're all doing it enough times together that it creates just one output. So I think it's not just the quality check, but it's also in terms of the physical drill. But there's also a quality check that needs to be had on the environment for the students that they're in. Um, so I would say that that's one of the biggest reasons that we should watch the the balance between how much is too much. And I think that's also going to depend on what level your team is at. If that's a brand new team just now is trying to get started, you're probably going to need to spend a lot more time because you have to build a lot more of a base. If you're a more established team, maybe you don't need as much time. And I think the fastest way to know if you're actually hitting too much time is if the team has hit their peak and they're now plateauing, if not actually and actively getting worse at practice. That means you're practicing too much, too long, or that it is not the right type of practice.
yeah.
So I think it's really easy to boil it down to like, oh, well, too much practice makes you worse. Well, sure. Honestly, it does. It leads to burnout, boredom, stress, all of which will implode your team long before the drill itself gets bad enough to be a problem. Because the people on the team won't want to be around each other because they can't stand each other. But I think in that regard, it's not actually that simple of the amount of time equals how good or how bad. It really does come down to the quality of what's being produced. And as somebody teaching or coaching, I think it should be very comfortable and normal to change the practice. Not necessarily the amount of days you're going, because it gets hard in terms of scheduling just around people's lives. But maybe if it's 3 times a week, and by the second time that week, as you're hitting the tail end of the season and the school year, and you're like, wow, we're not actually getting any better. We're just wasting time. Take that third day of practice, still meet up, but now you're doing study hall. Now you're doing uniform prep. Like, do other things. There's a lot more to drill team than just physically drilling. And I think we forget that in our practice schedules and just focus on dialing in the drill well beyond where it needs to be, and lose out on the rest of the activity.
Okay, I have one more thing that I was saying. I think, to go slightly off script, I think in a perfect world, I think the way that I would want to do practice, and like kind of what we tell people, is I think, because I know that what usually happens too is, like, as we get closer to the end of the season is usually when people start adding more practices, right? Because they feel like they're running out of time and
Yep.
have all these things that they, want to make up. I think I would want to flip that, and I'd want to make
Absolutely.
of the year where you do more practices, or that would be if you were going to do a weekend practice, maybe once or twice a month is thrown, because I think for us, we like to have a really long teaching period, right, where you aren't rushed in taking the time to learn the fundamentals and teach the routines and develop the relationships of the team. Is I think in a perfect world, we would have more practice at the beginning, so that way we're not
Yep.
rushed. Because I know, and depending where you are, like if you're not stuck inside, or like you're not fighting with, like, for space with other sports, like some competitions start very early in the season, right? Is I think I would want to have more time at the beginning, and then once you reach probably right after Christmas time frame and you're done with your teaching in the competing season part of it, that's probably when I would want to go down.
I want to back off
to less time.
Yeah.
Demands of life are also increasing in that time period too. So it's the perfect time to back off.
If you're getting closer to graduation, or you're getting close to whatever your state mandated testing is like, I then want to go to less time and go into semi-rehearsal, training practices, and do basically maintenance as needed. But that's with the fact that we took a long time in the beginning and our fundamentals are sound, and we didn't just rush through everything to try to compete. And now we need more practice time, because now we have to go back and re-break stuff down, because we are scrambling to fix the things that we could have fixed with a more relaxed, longer teaching period on the front side.
Well, and
fixing bad habits takes time.
Well, and that's why I only have 2 things to add on this topic. And the first thing is the problem that most teams arise, or the problem that comes up that you guys are describing. It comes from the fact that their basis and the program's basis for understanding how to practice military drill is the military. We keep coming back to this athletic performing art thing, because you can look at sports and you can look at arts. And there's one thing that both of those things have in common, which is that the team practice time is an extension of the individual practice time. If I am a pitcher, I am going to be going to my pitching coach, and I'm going to be in my backyard with my dad, trying my best to be a little league pitcher and failing repeatedly. Not a personal story or anything. If I'm a musician, I am going to spend hours in a practice room or in my, living room, trying not to annoy my family too much. If I'm a dancer, I'm going to spend hours and hours in my living room working on the things from class. And then when you get to the thing where everyone is together, it's time to put the pieces together. It's time to put the plays together. It's time to rehearse the actual choreography. Drill team, because I think lightly in the beginning, we talked about, everyone should do 25 reps of 15 count manual every day on their lunch period, and they come in and do 50 basic spins and 50 boxes, or like in 2026, if you're practicing drill on your own, then amazing, congratulations. It's never going to be an expectation like it is in sports and arts. Okay, so if that's true, here's the thing that I realized about what we are doing with the small groups and what we're doing with the extended teaching time and the giving it the quality time to work things out at the beginning. And what we're doing is we're making up for and we're inserting into team practice
the
individual rep.
time the individual time it takes to hone your craft, which every sport and every art is doing outside of that scheduled time for the team.
Right.
So thing number one about the practice versus time is you shouldn't be using all that time to do things with a team because no one else thinks that's a good idea. You should be at least, I don't know, call it 70-30 individual skill development, individual craft honing to team putting it together. And then like you guys were saying, like we do when we get further into the season, you don't need to rehearse for that long because you're coming in, you're putting together the skills that you've already honed early on. So what we've been describing for literally years and years and years is simply what everyone else is expected to do outside of practice, we have inserted back into practice for a drill team. That's thing number one. And thing number two is, and I saw this again, I think if you want to be successful at anything, you have to study things that aren't the thing that you're doing. I recently came across a post and I shared it with you guys that said, like, it's from a professional performing drummer, musician who plays professionally and has a career gigging for well-known artists and so forth. And he said that most people come to him and they don't need more practice. They actually need less. And what they need is better practice, more specific practice. And their problem is that they've spent all this time and all they've done is solidify bad habits. And all they've done is confuse.
Yeah, that's what the book that we're reading is talking about is her students always come in, like a lot of her students have that thing where like they end up practicing for long periods of time. And when they ask her, she's like, I only need you to do this. And they're like, really?
Short bursts of, and what he said was short bursts of specific work in the exact way that your mentor has guided you to do it. Right.
Otherwise you ingrain those bad habits that you're trying to break.
And we've started to tell the schools, you guys get to the meet and you still have bad habits. Yeah, the system you're using is perfectly designed to give you the outcome you're getting. The more practice has every time that you improved one thing by doing the whole card all the way through and you thought, hey, we're going to fix our pivots today. When you do the whole card all the way through 5 times at practice, yeah, the pivots got better. 18 bajillion things just locked in as being bad habits.
And because the question is what our opinion is on the idea that more practice
does not equal better results all the time.
But I just real quick, I just anecdotally, like, okay, so in the whole time that I was in high school, we didn't win like the top like national championship, right? When I was a freshman, I was thinking about it. We didn't practice on Saturdays. That was the year we got runner-up. The only reason we started practicing on Saturdays is because going into my sophomore year, we had 7 seniors graduate and like 2 people move. And so we had like a team of mostly freshmen. I think there was 1 or 2 seniors, a couple of juniors, and then I was like the only there were like 2 sophomores, right? And so we had the majority were freshmen, and that's whenever we started doing Saturday practices. And then once we started them, we just never stopped going all the way through like my senior year, but we didn't win the whole time that we were like there. Like like none of the time, and we practiced, I mean, more hours than had ever been practiced before, and I'm pretty sure we got 4th place like all 3 years in a row, even though we got better, and that had to do with like the teaching got better and we figured out other things as we went through. But like, so just like as a like direct result of like that is like more practice does not always equal better results in this case, because like I literally lived that. We continued to add practice, and it did not cause us to be more successful than we had been previously. So just like an actual like direct thing, if like you're 2 hours after school 5 days a week, 4 hours on Saturday, plus when we were on the side time, we were doing 2 a day. So we would come in for, 4 hours, go whatever, and come back, like practicing almost 8 hours every single day for the month and a half leading up into school. Like, that
Well,
did
don't
not
forget the 2 hours in front. That wasn't
well,
directly drill related,
it
but
wasn't
also
drill.
it was. So it was 4 hours a day, every day.
It put PT and academics and color guard, but it was so yeah. We were coming in before school too and doing other drill related things that were not like drill team stuff, but like that did not necessarily equate to like the result that people think. So I think just on a direct thing is like what Matt is saying is effective practice is definitely going to be more impactful than like quantity of practice for sure.
I'm not. My opinion about that is, why do thing long time when less time do thing better? Right? Like, I don't want to be there that long. At some point the fun runs out.
Well, okay, and I will just say is that worked for us because we liked drill team and we liked each other, and so like we didn't burn out on that because but that was the culture of that team was also 20 years old. That was just the expectation that you were going to give up your life. I would never try and do that for a new team.
Well, in 2026, it's just never going to happen. That is probably done forever.
So I just want to say, like, we weren't miserable. I do want to like say is like we weren't miserable
No.
doing that, but so we're choosing to do that, and our parents were making time for that, and we were having people who were seniors get cars so we could get we had to make that work. And even with all of that, and even though we had a great time, and even though we loved each other and we loved our experience on drill team, that still did not result in like the ultimate like
better results.
No, we got the same result 3 years in a row, even though we were technically probably better by the time of that third year came around, like by the time I was a senior. So more practice does not necessarily equal better results.
Okay. I'm gonna summarize the last one. This is a great one to end on. So the premise of the question from the person in our network is basically, when you're in a position or when you bring certain experiences or when you have a certain ability level or understanding or knowledge base, but you're not in a formal leadership position, how can you help the team without stepping on anyone's toes or overstepping your role on the team? And in this particular case, this pertains to a collegiate drill team. And obviously the goal of a collegiate drill team much different than the goal of a scholastic junior ROTC competitive drill team. But I think the question is one that applies to all levels, is basically what happens, how can you be of most benefit without stepping on people's toes or overstepping your boundaries as, the position that you're in?
That's a really good question.
I think this one, because I did do this. I did exactly what the question is asking, actually, on the collegiate level for a smidgen of time there. And also in being in the Corps, making people good at drill when my literal livelihood outside of being at college was teaching drill was a fun one. I think it comes down to what we tell leaders on drill teams as well that are not commanders. The base level of this is like, you're important, you're valuable. Insofar as you did not detract from the actual goal and bigger mission of the drill team activity that you've decided to join, if you cannot be in the commander or top dog position, is everything you do still has to be in service of that. And that means sometimes the hardest, worst part about it is that means doing nothing outwardly in a big showy way of like being the one teaching. But it does mean doing a lot of the work on the side and in smaller ways that you will probably not get credit for unless you have really good leaders that like want to acknowledge that they had help kind of doing the process. But I think it stems from helping the people around you get as good as you can help them be, not necessarily at practice or maybe in practice, but within the context of what is being done already. So if the exercise is to go learn this sequence, well, maybe because you're really good at learning ways to teach from doing this and having that knowledge is that you're going to help teach that sequence to the people that you're working with in the group. Maybe that's setting up time outside of practice to help anyone that's falling behind catch up because you are good at it. You already were at that level and now you can help them outside of practice. But I think the place that it starts is being honest that this is something that you are good at and something you have a passion for, and knowing that you should talk to the commanders or whoever's kind of running the system, basically. So whoever fits that bill, if that's instructors, if that's like actual higher level instructors in terms of like collegiate drill teams, if that's as small as a commander on the drill team that's like a peer, is setting the time aside to talk with them, figure out where they're trying to go, and asking directly how you can be of assistance and if they would like assistance, and fitting into the mission of what they're trying to get done. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow for people that are good at the activity that are also not leading the activity, is that sometimes the most you can do is just be the most enthusiastic follower of whatever the
Yes.
person that's actually in charge is asking you to do, because you will then set the example for everyone
Well,
that this
yeah.
is just how things get done.
Well, and I think the piece that came to mind for me right away was the last piece that you said, which is you probably have a better way to do it, and you're not being asked for your better way. Otherwise, you'd be in that position. What
Yep.
is most important is when the people are doing it inefficiently, that as long as it's not harmful, illegal, immoral, unethical, right? Well, all
Yeah.
the important stuff, that you are backing the leadership 100%, even if it's ineffectual. And then the way that you support them is by doing what they're asking you to do, and then going behind outside of practice when you see your peers falling behind, and just being the person that can help them and takes the time out of their schedule, because at that point you're taking time out of your schedule and their schedule to help them, not out of the commander's plan, not out of the instructor's plan, not out of the cadre's plan, right? And in doing that, not only are you always supporting the actions of the leadership of the team, but you're also then shoring up the areas where it might be falling, people might be falling through the cracks. You're really making sure that that's not going to happen, but you're not doing it on someone else's time. You're doing it on your time, which is above and beyond anyway, right? It's a good thing no matter what. But I think the first thing that came to mind is, like, as long as it's not illegal, immoral, unethical, if you have a better way to do it, you still got to support the way that's being done and use your ways in the micro to help the people that it's not working
Mhm.
for.
Doing that, by the time you're in that upper class position, you're probably going to have some type of leadership.
Well, and you'll have a relationship with the people that you helped, which is only going to be a positive thing.
So even if you don't become the commander, you will have a leadership role in that, because you will have proven that you can be trusted with the people and the responsibility. And
Well, and you will not have alienated yourself as somebody that, even though it's coming from a place of trying to be helpful, if you are stepping on the toes of the current leadership, if you ever have aspirations of becoming leadership, the people that make those decisions are watching that interaction and seeing that your behavior is insidious and is potentially hurting the team, and you're not a team player, so on and so forth. There's a lot of negatives that can be very easily applied to somebody that is overzealously trying to be helpful when it's not quite their turn to be that helpful yet. And it would actually, more likely than not, prevent you from ever having the chance to be leadership, because what people will see instead is that you were just a disruption on the team, even if you were better.
Forest and trees. That's and I was a victim of this in high school. If you
Most
think
passionate people are.
well, you think the most important thing is doing the thing you're doing, and you don't have the scope to recognize that the most important thing is the people that are peopling.
well, I think the most important thing is honoring the position that you are in and doing that
Yeah.
position to the best of your ability. And
Yep.
no matter what position you're in, whether it's some leadership or no
leadership,
or on the team, not on the team, whatever position you're in, it's your job to basically make that the best it can be within your realm, and basically make sure the stuff that you have under your purview is the best it can be, no matter where you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, that's the forest for the trees, cut off your nose to spite your face. Basically, all of the things about getting in front of where you actually mean to be, especially when it's not coming from a malicious place. And I speak that as somebody that has a very large mouth when I have strong opinions on things, and it has often hurt me in the long run. And I have learned not to do everything I just said.
Awesome. Well, these were outstanding questions. Again, hopefully there was something in here that was helpful for you out there as you're listening to this. You can find us on all social media platforms: Drill Team Dynamics, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, etc., etc. Check out our website at JROTC DrillTeamTraining.com to learn more and get in touch. And if you have questions, of course, leave them in the comments or send them to us however you found this, and we will either answer them or we'll include them on a future episode.